When people think about the cons of AI, they mainly think that it guzzles too much water or that it ruins creativity because it's a robot making stuff. However, there are a lot more issues that people think there are. This is why I want to talk about some of these issues and then offer a solution to these issues so they can be more noted and something can be done about them. First, I'll talk about how AI has been affecting the education sector and how essentially it has been removing critical thinking skills in some students. Then I'll talk about how it's increasing consumer prices. And lastly, I'll offer some solutions to these problems that I will talk about. First, let me talk about how this is affecting student learning. In the graph, you can see how much AI has been being invested in and how they're assuming it'll be $32 billion by the time of 2030. So it's definitely very prominent in the education sector. A study done by Hassan and Kay shows how AI has essentially been removing the effort reward cycle, which is essentially a cycle where in education there is learning, then there is the accomplishment of learning and the accomplishment of overcoming feats of learning. But with AI, it essentially removes that. Again, another study according to Binny Josie, relying too much on AI to provide answers removes critical thinking skills and it weakens those abilities to use them. If people don't use enough critical thinking skills and they don't practice them, their skills are essentially weakened until they're just not there anymore. And another study done by Hassan M.K., it also shows how research essentially how AI bypasses the research points of learning and how it stops students from questioning why and being curious about learning. To continue, other than educational issues, there are also some private consumer issues and how they're increasing prices. So I'll talk a little bit about those. First, I'll talk about how Blake Montgomery says how memory and computer chip prices are vastly increasing due to the need for data centers, which is creating more company spending. And when there's more company spending, they're essentially putting those prices or they're putting those costs back onto the consumer, increasing prices for individual consumers of their products. Nicole Greenfield states how certain data centers can use up to 16,000 gallons of water per day, while could use 5 million gallons of water per day, which is about the equivalent of 16,000 households, just one singular data center. Again, another study done by Nicole, but there's a different graph, is that you can see how a medium data center uses 5 megawatt hours, which is, I think, 5 million watts, while a home uses only 29,000, which is significantly less. So there's a very great difference in that. Nicole Greenfield also states that certain ones, like the very giant ones, use about 100 megawatt hours, which is about 100,000 households. Essentially, this just makes it so when supply decreases, such as water and electricity, and demand increases, data centers need that water and electricity. These companies and the water and power systems increase the prices in order to take advantage of this increase in demand, which also gets put onto the consumer and the individual households. Well, you know the problems, so let me offer some solutions. The main solution here is that there just needs to be significant regulations and guidelines placed onto these AI systems and data centers. An article by Binny Josie, like previously stated, she states how AI can actually be used to increase educational learning. However, there needs to be certain guidelines and regulations in place for that to happen. For example, she states how it can remove cognitive overload, which is essentially this concept where it's just too much like knowledge and too much information going to the brain, which is overfilling it and not allowing proper cognitive efficiency to occur. AI can be used to remove that, but then at the same time increase critical thinking skills. study made by Morgan, Scarborough, and Kim Miller states how Maine actually has been using legislation to essentially create research and community-based discussions on data centers that might be established in the state. This way the community can talk about and it can be discussed between the people in the state, so then they can determine if the data center is really necessary and if it will harm other consumers. You can see that in this graph. There's a couple of states that have either enacted, proposed, or have not done anything about AI legislation. You can see that California is one of them, Texas and Connecticut is one of them, which I will talk about. According to Jenny McKenna, states like I just said, California, Texas, Connecticut. You can also see some other countries like Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana. They have been establishing certain oversight boards and meetings to essentially create regulations and oversight on certain AI data systems and AI systems and data centers before they get placed out into the public. This is definitely needed because some of these AI systems are completely unregulated and are not seen by government at all. Alright, well, you know the problems and the solutions, so let me just summarize everything real quick. There's no more slides. Essentially, there are definitely more issues than commonly talked about when it comes to AI. It isn't just about the guzzling of water and the ruining of creativity, but there's a lot more to it, which is why I wanted to talk about this. I essentially talked about how it ruins education. Then I moved on to how it increases consumer expenses. And lastly, I finished up on solutions. I hope that you can take this information, understand it, and then hopefully spread it to other people so that we can figure out how to create these solutions to these detrimental problems that AI is creating. Thank you.